For all the new viewers, I'm creating a huge Wimpy Kid fan masterpiece. And I actually drew the cover of Rowley's Friendly Adventure, so if you want to be the first to see the complete video when it drops, please consider subscribing. If you like Wimpy Kid, I'm positive you will like this channel. Stick around at the end to find out why, and also have a chance to get a shout out on my next video. Thanks. This video contains spoilers. My thoughts before reading the book. On February 13th, Jeff Kinney announced his new book in the Rowley Jefferson series, called Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure. It was supposed to be released on April 7th, but because of the pandemic, it was postponed to August 4th. You might think that because my critique of Wrecking Ball was so strongly negative, I'd automatically hate any books following that novel. But no, of course not. I'm not that stubborn. I actually thought the first Rowley Jefferson spin-off book was pretty okay. Even though Greg was being a bit too jerky to be a protagonist, I was glad Jeff Kinney was diversifying and changing up his content. It was obvious that the original series was stretched out for a bit too long and something needed to change. I can see the connection of Jeff Kinney creating a new series like Awesome Friendly Kid with the author of Captain Underpants Dave Pilkey creating Dogman. I didn't really have too much of an idea for what the book was about other than it says adventure, so I looked at the Amazon description for the book and here's what it said. You've never seen the Wimpy Kid world like this before, an entirely new, awesome, friendly. I think I already knew that. Isn't that just the title? But anyways, that's not important. Truly fantastic fantasy quest from #1 international best-selling author Jeff Kinney. Okay, so it's basically an adventure with some sprinkled in fictional stuff. I'm just gonna get into the book, but before I do, let me just tell you something strange leading up to the book. On Instagram, and they were doing a sneak peek promo for the book by giving each character a reveal. What is that? You're probably thinking, Top Rank, that's just a centaur, but instead of a horse, it's a cow. But you do realize a cow is a female. Steven is a man, but I'm not going to assume. This is just my reaction when I got the book from the library.
The book from the library, and it's called Rowley Jefferson's Awesome Friendly Adventure by Jeff Kinney. So we're going to read the book and I'll see how I like it. Now I'm not going to be like last time. I'm not going to be like, oh my god, this is the worst book ever, but I'm not going to be a suck up like, wow, this is so good. I'll be neutral in the beginning and we'll see how it goes. So let's do this.
In the beginning, we have your standard description. Rowley always describes himself, except in this book, Rowley is supposed to be Roland, and he's just a perfect child who never complains. The rising conflict is when Roland finds his mother missing and realizes she's kidnapped by the White Warlock in the Ice Fortress. You probably already know what happens, and so do I. However, this book isn't just a regular story that follows one plot. Rowley in the real world is currently writing the book and telling the story, but every chapter flashes back to him and Greg reacting to the previous passages. I think it's cool that Jeff Kinney is being original, but at the same time, you don't get to immerse yourself into Rowley's story completely because every 10 pages or so, your story gets cut with Greg talking about why he didn't like the last chapter because there weren't enough killings. I think a better approach was to have Greg react in the beginning before the story starts, and then at the end. That way, you don't need intermissions or breaks. What you have to understand here is Greg and Rowley are technically fictional celebrities, which means they don't need to do that much action or anything interesting. They just need to be in the book and attach the brand name to the cover. Nobody wants to read a book called Roland's Adventure, and I'm pretty sure someone who would write the exact same book with the same plot would not and could not attract such a large audience that Jeff Kinney can. I'm just making sure Jeff Kinney isn't taking his large audience for granted by writing subpar books, and luckily this time around he isn't. Even though you got a 217-page book, it's more like a 153-page book with commentary and reaction, and it seems a bit like a page filler. That was the main complaint, or for the civilized, constructive criticism, but I have some more positives later in this video. And I'm saying that because I actually do have some praises, and also I don't need these comments that are like, you're just a hater, dolphin liker. I love dolphins, thank you very much. What some people, young kids, have to understand, and it's not all of you, is that just because I critique or dislike a book in the series doesn't mean I'm stupid or a hater. We can all find common ground on things we like, and as you get older, you'll learn about controlling emotions and how to reason with someone who disagrees with you. That was my PSA. Now Greg. Greg. Here's what I learned about him from this book. He wants to capitalize and cash in on everything. He wants to make merch, movies, video games, you name it. His character Garg is a simp. He's also pretty egoistic, but not completely a psychopath or obnoxious compared to other books because the story was mostly fictional and not in the Wimpy Kid world. Greg is a wimp in real life, but you know what he thinks he looks like? Bam! Biggest expectations versus reality. But Top Rank, Garg looks pretty hot though. No comment. Here's the main simp moment. Greg told me the other thing the story is missing is romance. He said every good book has some kind of love story in it, so we better add one to ours. He said a good couple would be Garg and Shyvana because the elf would like Garg's muscles. For anyone who doesn't know what a simp is usually a guy who tries way too hard to get the ladies. We really need to get going into the story now. I'm not going to read the entire book and get copyrighted by Recorded Books again, so let me just read some highlights. Right away, Greg becomes the illustrator and Rowley focuses on the writing. Rowley is the overly good kid who always does his best to satisfy his parents. Greg is more centered around himself and doesn't care too much about others, unless it benefits him. He wants all the gore and violence, while Rowley just wants a utopia where everybody can get along. Neither of the options are good for a story, but if you can find a middle ground and a balance of, hey, maybe the world isn't always perfect, loving, and kind, but sometimes you don't need violence to solve answers or to make a good story. That was definitely a positive. I wish during the transition out of Roland's adventure and into Greg and Rowley's world, there could be two plots going on, which a lot of books do. However, that doesn't really happen. Greg doesn't like what Rowley is writing. He's always complaining how something isn't realistic, even though the book is fantasy. Perhaps Greg could have learned more appreciation for Rowley's book and complimented a few things at the end to show that he's changed from the beginning. Not changed completely as a person, but someone who's able to connect with his best friend and maybe be a bit less selfish. Meanwhile, in Roland's adventure, can we just admit Buff Mom is fire? That's just me. I gotta say the map Jeff Kinney designed is pretty innovative and pleasing to look at. Props to him or the publisher for putting the map on the inside of the cover so I don't have to turn to page 28 every time I look at the map. Roland and Garg's first stop was helping clueless villagers with their township labor. Although I think it's always a good citizen's duty to help others, I do agree with Greg that it's definitely sucking up. They were helping so much that the villagers didn't see any need to learn the tasks or working at all. At the end, Garg and Roland had to leave the village to save Roland's mom. And the villagers said, okay, but after you guys rescue Roland's mom, maybe you can all come back and then she can help out too. So Roland promised. He talked to his mom about that after he saved her, and he said goodbye to his new friends. I understand I'm not the writer here, and I think this is a bit specific. I think Mr. Kinney could have added these 3 lessons that could have made this event a good message. 1. Don't expect others to do the work for you. I feel like if I was a young kid reading this book, I would subconsciously get this message that, hey, if I don't understand how to do something, maybe I should rather wait for someone to teach me or do it for me. I know as a toddler and as a kid, you do need assistance to do stuff that you just can't do, like reaching a high cabinet for food or tying your shoes. But this book isn't for toddlers, it's for epic gamers, aka elementary school kids, where they start to have more responsibility for chores, allowance, etc. Honestly, trying something new for the first time isn't going to be a successful experience. It's okay to ask for questions, directions, or imitate. What Roland should have done was teach the villagers how to do their labor. Obviously the villagers aren't dumb, they just don't know how to do their work. It's sort of like your parents tell you to take out the trash for the first time, but you think, I have no idea what to grab or where to put the bin. I guess I'm not doing it because I don't know how to. Take chances, you'll make mistakes, but don't be afraid to try. Number 2. Give a man a fish and feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you'll feed him for a lifetime. This one's self-explanatory, and I kind of explained it on the last one. You can help someone over and over again, but teaching him to make a better person out of themselves and giving them knowledge to succeed is way more liberating. Number 3. Don't promise work when you're busy with someone else. Now, I'm not saying if you feel like you're busy, you can't try new things. No, nada. Roland's mission was to help his mom, but it turns out he shifts his time to something else rather than his main task. You might feel helpful to do something else at the moment, but someone will always feel betrayed because you promised something that you weren't able to do, and that's a flaker. I think if the author added at least one of these themes to this part of the story, I would be like, dang, this part really shows a good example for children. I was definitely becoming Mr. Boring, annoyingly Aesop there, but in my defense, this book should have at least some lessons or theme rather than just an action-packed jamboree. It shouldn't dominate the entire story like what I kind of did in Empty Pockets, but it shouldn't be non-existent. Next, the awesome friendly squad trekked into the forest with the Pixie Village. You know, in other action-packed fantasies, the hero or a good guy has a weapon that really belongs to them. In Harry Potter, it's the Holly Phoenix Feather Wand, Percy Jackson's Riptide, Magnus Chase's Summerbrander, and Awesome Friendly Adventure, it's the Sword in the Stone. Wait, I meant the Sword in the Rock. It's called Jeremy, and it turns bad guys into good people. A bit of a far stretch, but I'm not cherry-picking on that, because this book is for kids after all. In the story, Garg wasn't able to pull the sword out of the rock, but Roland was because he had a pure heart. The hilarious thing was Greg's reaction to reading that and illustrating that chapter. He is salty. Saltier than a Jimmy John's sandwich. Listen. Greg said it was totally unrealistic that Roland could have pulled a sword out of the rock when Garg couldn't. He said Garg probably loosened it, and that's why Roland got out so easily. Greg, we might agree on some stuff, but the author writes the story, and you're just gonna have to follow it. Even though Greg always wants Rowley to change the story because it's not the way he envisions it, props to Rowley for choosing his own way despite others disagreeing. That's a good lesson, except Rowley did follow Greg's advice to kill a character, which was Lefty, even though Lefty is technically under control by an antagonist, and it was a magic spell created by the One-Eyed Wizard. Speaking of the One-Eyed Wizard, I like how Jeff Kinney just adds one more trait to make a character a bit different from a standard fantasy book. Wizard, more like One-Eyed Wizard. Female elf? What about a female elf that can shoot arrows? Shyvana is a nice name, pretty unique though. Vampire? He's also a werewolf. Stephen the Ordinary Man? Let's merge him with the lower half of a female cattle. Big magical hand? It's also a left hand. Then we got a bunch of pop culture characters like Medusa, Sherlock Holmes, and the Little Mermaid. Even though Medusa is definitely not copyrighted, I think Sherlock Holmes is still under a lasting copyright by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Whether Jeff Kinney got licensing rights, maybe this novel is exempt from this certain copyright, or he made a deal to share profits. Hopefully Jeff Kinney won't get sued, but if he does, I wouldn't be surprised. It's a complicated process where things get appealed in cases are tried for either public domain or copyright. Anyways, I actually enjoyed the part where the trolls and pixies used empathy to understand each other and work to a conclusion because before they despised each other. So Jeff Kinney, good for you. The Medusa scene kind of reminded me of Percy Jackson's encounter with the same character. This time Medusa was a lot smarter. Oh look, a unicorn wearing a diaper. Oh look, a gnome with 2 butts. You thought that was the end of it, but Roland was a savage because he thought Medusa looked ugly. Medusa asked Roland if she looked pretty now, but Roland remembered his mom telling him that if you don't have anything nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. So that's what he did. Tap, tap, tap. Ow. And then the chapter ends there. So that was part 1. Stick around for part 2 to see my complete review and how you can get a shout out.